sun. I'll be okay, I'll take these days one by one. And though the times are hard, I still know where I belong. I keep looking up so I can hold on. For now, I'll choose this life I live, and for now, I'll choose to take my hits, 'cause at the end of the day, all we have is who we are. Life, hurry now, I'm running out of time, and I'm growing weak, as are these dreams that are mine. Though the days are long, I'm still running strong. I keep looking up so I can hold on. For now, I'll choose this life I live, and for now, I'll choose to take my hits, 'cause at the end of the day, all we have is who. At the end of the day, all we have is who we are. At the end of the day, all we have is who we are.
All right. Want to welcome everybody to our Tuesday, Monday. Hello. I'm off Tuesday. That's something. Monday, Memorial Day, and hope everybody had a great day. Of course, we celebrate this day in memorial or in memory of those who never came home, um, those that never was able to take off their uniform. We hear about. I got a good one here, and I'm sorry. By the way, you got me and Tony hosting this evening, and what did you do today, Tony? I know it was your daughter Kiba's birthday.
We went out to pickles and chicken and pickle. Is that what it's called?
Chicken and pickle.
It was fun. Got to win some cornhole, spend it with the grandkids. It was good.
Awesome. My wife and I, with Hannah, Jana, and Will, went to Bernie and went to a German restaurant up there. It's kind of mixed. It's German and Czech. And but they have a lot of German foods that I'm accustomed to, that I remember from Germany.
Sauerkraut.
And man, I'm telling you, it's amazing. And so we did have sauerkraut. I had different kind of sausages, potatoes.
Do you eat that German potato salad?
I do. My mom made it all the time. In fact, I know how to make it.
It's like with the vinegar and all that. Right?
It's more of an apple cider vinegar. I don't use
Okay,
straight
okay.
vinegar. To me, you have to use apple cider vinegar.
Okay, that's probably the difference.
Yeah. But we spent the day, or actually the afternoon there, left here about 10 o'clock in the morning, and actually had a great ride. The weather was perfect. Nice breeze.
Really
It was
was.
overcast, but just perfect, man.
Really
Very
was.
comfortable. And it's next to the river there in Bernie. And then after we ate, we walked the river, went to the shops, I found out they have Black Rifle coffee there.
Oh,
And so I had a
Mm.
hit.
brother loves his coffee. Too.
Man, I had a hit. It was amazing. But it is Memorial Day, folks. And even in Bernie, I'm sure as well as throughout the nation, they are acknowledging our men and women in uniform that gave the ultimate sacrifice and didn't make it home, is how I can put it. They never made it home, but they did give it their all,
Yes,
and
they did.
faithful to the end, so that we can have what we have today, the liberties, the freedoms. And I don't know about some, but I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot to the core, raised in the military family, traveled different places because my dad was military. He served in the Army 22 years and retired. And so I was raised on living on bases from Washington, D.C. to Germany. And then ultimately we settled here in San Antonio, lived on Fort Sam, and then bought a house right off base on Riddiman Road. But I love working for Joint Base San Antonio now. Been with Fort Sam going on 11 years. And I originally, after I found out I wasn't going to make pro ball, I went to the Naval Academy, being that I was a diver. I loved the water. I wanted to go to the Navy, but didn't want to go alone. I was a little chicken, I guess. I was very shy back then. So I wanted to go in the buddy program with a buddy of mine who graduated with me.
I wasn't around yet.
Yeah. And so, we went to get a physical. I passed the physical. I passed everything I needed to pass, but he didn't. So he couldn't go forward. And me was a little bit intimidated. I backed out. And I don't live my life in regret, but I was like, man, I wish I would have just kept going, because when I see days like this, and not just Memorial Day, when I see Veterans Day, and just seeing how I'm proud of our military. I'm proud as an American.
Yes.
Every time I see a military person in Bernie today, excuse me, I was able to see some older gentlemen, I'll say, and they were in their uniforms or wearing their cap.
Yes.
And just to be able to thank them and like I said, it's Memorial Day to remember the ones that didn't come home, but you can't talk to them. You can remember, you can appreciate the ultimate sacrifice. I mean, the dedication they had, knowing, but to see these men and women in uniform at these celebrations and at these services, and to be able to go up and shake their hand, and I'm honored.
I don't know if I ever told you this. My dad fought in the Korean War, and he told me when he hit that beach, they were shooting, and he said he was so scared that all he can do is he just bit the sand.
Yeah.
There he said bullets were just flying everywhere, and he got wounded. He made it back home.
Praise God. That's good. There's a thing that was posted earlier today that I love the saying. It goes to say that Armed Forces Day is for those still in their uniform. Veterans Day is for those who hung up their uniform. Memorial Day is for those who never made it out of their uniform. And I thought that was very profound, very powerful. But once again, you see the sacrifice that was given by these men and women that went to battle and went to war and never made it home. And so to them and to their families that are living without them right now, I want to salute you and say thank you for giving your spouse, giving your father, your mother, brother, sister, your son, daughter, and to send them off. And we never know. Even when my dad went off, I never knew if he's going to return. And I was emotional right back then anyway. But to you, I just thank you. And God bless you. So today, And just to give you a little history of Memorial Day, I'm going to read this, and then we have a special guest that we're going to show you and allow him to speak.
Yes, indeed.
First of all, Memorial Day was unofficially begun by women of the South during the Civil War.
Yes,
I don't know why I'm always looking at my screen. I need to be looking at the camera. It's a bad habit, but I'm working on it.
You look good. You know what you look like. Look at all this niceness. You know.
Yeah.
There you go. That's what you're looking at.
By women in the South during the Civil War, when they placed flowers over the graves of the men in gray. In 1868, General John A. Logan, Commander-in-Chief of the Grand Army of the Republic, issued an order officially setting aside May 30th as Decoration Day.
Mm-hmm.
It has now become an occasion on which we remember not only those who have fallen in war, but all are dead. A few years ago, a wall was built in Washington, D.C. On it were inscribed the names of the thousands who had died in the Vietnam War, perhaps the most controversial war in our nation's history. But regardless of what people thought about that war, this wall memorial reminds us that thousands of Americans sacrificed their lives in that far-off place. Most of them were young people who wanted to hold on to life. Their names are on that wall. I've been to that wall, and I've seen family members at that wall with their hand or their finger upon the name of that loved one and tears coming out of their eyes. It's a very emotional time to see that. But it's even more so when, and granted, I didn't have the time to go see if I had any family there. I was very young. Well, I wasn't even born, I don't think. But anyway, when I became of age,
Makes me feel good.
to go back to that wall and to see all those names, I mean, it is amazing to me to see that the sacrifice that was made. And not only that, but also the tomb of the unknown soldier. That to watch, the word escapes me, but to watch the ceremony and the guard that guards the tomb of the unknown soldier night and day. It doesn't matter if it's stormed. I remember when George Bush Jr. was president and they had a hurricane blowing through, that he authorized the okay for them to stand down because of the threat of that hurricane, and they refused. They said, with all due respect, no, Mr. President, they need to know that we are still watching over them.
Yes.
Man. And to watch the changing of the guard. And so having said all that, today is that day that we just appreciate, we show our gratitude. We better show our gratitude.
It's not about barbecue.
It's not. Even though, you know, if you have barbecue, enjoy it. But
That's
man,
fine.
start it off with an appreciation and an acknowledgement for the men and women that did it all for you to have that barbecue.
And let those who don't know what Memorial Day is about, let them know what it's really about. You know, it's just not about barbecue.
Right.
So let them know. Teach them.
Yes. And so for you that just joined, appreciate you joining with us.
Yes.
Please put in the chat who you are, because once again, I can't see who you are. We want to know who you are. We want to know who's joining in so we can acknowledge you and thank you for joining in with
Yes.
this. This is going to be, in my heart, a special time. And what really moved me to do this on this day, because we usually do it on a Tuesday,
Yes.
our podcast, is Sunday morning.
Sunday school.
The Sunday morning service. Pastor Miguel Martinez preached a masterpiece sermon on, and I actually have the book. I was trying to find it earlier, but I moved things around so I can't find it. But it was on the USS Indianapolis, and the story behind that and the survivor that we showed in the service, that, man, I think there's some teary eyes, including my own, in that place.
I was wringing out my handkerchief.
So, we want to, or rather, I decided that I needed to have a Memorial Day podcast.
He was stirred. Very
I
stirred.
was.
And I don't blame him for being stirred.
And I just felt like I had to do something today.
Amen.
I always, whenever days like these come, that we can reflect on our military and the sacrifices that have been made, the sacrifices that are being made. And I feel like I have to acknowledge that and show my appreciation and my gratitude and my sincere thanks. So once again, if you're here and you're on our channel watching this, please text in chat and let us know who you are so we can acknowledge you and thank you for joining us.
And tell someone so they can join in.
Yes, and tell someone. And so to go further, and I was well instructed today to hold off on the music, and I thought that was a great idea, or the background music, as I like to have to kind of fill in. We're going to back that off today, and because we have a special guest, and when I say special guest, I mean it.
Yes.
Because he is a dear brother of ours, is in our church, and if I could have filled this room with veterans this evening, I would have done so. That may be next year when I have more cameras and more room to do so. But I do want to acknowledge and welcome my brother, Gilbert Chavez. And I'm going to kind of be off cam, but I want to acknowledge him. And he was a veteran. I think we need to close those blinds. So it looks like he's being sliced in his chest.
Yeah, I got you. I remember.
Yeah. And so Gilbert is a Navy veteran. And how many years were you in the Navy, brother?
6 years.
6 years in the Navy.
Yeah.
And your position?
I was a quartermaster. That's navigation. In the Army, a quartermaster is supplies and stuff like that. But in the Navy, quartermaster is navigation. We're the ones who get you from point A to point B. Without us, the ship doesn't go anywhere.
Okay.
So he controlled the ship. He was a driver. Fair to say, you were the driver.
Actually, helmsman.
Helmsman.
Coming from a non-experienced. See, I should have went in the Navy. I would have known this.
There you go. Yeah.
You know what starboard is and all that stuff. Not left and right.
Yeah.
So, what year did you go in?
1969.
69.
Yeah. But first off, I want to say thank you for inviting me here. I didn't realize what your podcast was all about, but when you explained it to me, I thought, sure, I'll be here.
Yeah. We may need to bring this up. I need you to speak on the side of it.
Yeah, right on the side.
Yeah.
There you go. We got you.
Bring it up a little more,
We got you.
even with his mouth. There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
So, of course, the honor is
Oh,
ours
that's gone.
to have you here.
Got it?
And
Is that better?
that is good.
Okay.
And so, this was all last minute. I usually try to give myself a few days to a week to prepare, to get things organized. And as you notice, our little backdrop here, freedom isn't free. Of course, you have to have that versus the background of our city, downtown San Antonio, being on this day. But I did, I think I went straight to you. I bypassed John Cortez. Not that that was purposely done. James, thank you. You got James Cáceres?
Cáceres.
Amen. My brother James is online. Appreciate you joining us, James.
Hello, James.
Anybody
Good to
else?
see you.
Chat in. Let us know that you're here, who you are.
All right.
But I went straight to Gilbert, and I thought, Gilbert, you got to be on my podcast, man. This is Memorial Day, and out of anybody, I was like, I got to have Gilbert. And So, Gilbert, this evening, I just want to ask you to go back to those years, if you could, and kind of describe where you went, what your orders were, and some of the locations you went to.
Yeah, well, I'll see what I can do because the little gray cells are not as sharp as they used to be.
Just tell us
But
the
I'll see what I
juicy
can.
stuff.
It's so funny because when I graduated in 1967 from Harlandale High School, I went straight from there into San Antonio College to, you know, get better at taking photography because I love taking pictures. That's what I do. Ever since I was 16, I've been having a camera in my hand. And so it was only a logical step for me to go to college. So I went to SAC, and I was there for 2 years. And after I got everything done, I thought, well, you know what? 1968, 1969, I decided I was going to take a break. In January, I didn't sign up for the next semester. And lo and behold, within a couple of weeks, I got a letter from my dear Uncle Sam. And he said, "Greetings from your Uncle Sam." I said, "Mom, do we have an Uncle Sam?"
I remember that letter. I
Yeah.
got one of those too.
And so, because, when you're 18, back in those days, when you were 18, you had to sign up for the draft. There's no
Right, right.
everyone,
Sure
without
do.
condition, you had to sign up for the draft.
I
Men
remember
only.
that.
For the women, they went to the wax, they did things like that. But for the men, it was absolutely, you had to do
You
it.
had to.
It was a law. That's all it was.
You
It was
had
a law.
to.
And so I got that notice, and I had 30 days before, make up my mind where I wanted to go. And I decided, since my uncle was in the Navy, I wanted to go to the Navy also.
Okay.
But I waited till the day before. I was supposed to go report to the Army. So I went to the Navy recruiter and I said, "Hey, can I join up in the Navy?" He goes, "Yeah, sure, man. What makes you want to sign up?" So I showed him the letter, and he looked at it and said, "Man, you got one day left. I don't know if we can get you in." Of course, he was just pulling my leg. But he said, "Let me talk to my chief. Maybe we can get you in. Maybe we can squeeze you in, right?" And I said, "Oh, okay." Well, that was just Navy jargon for "yeah, right." And so they brought me in, and so I went to boot camp. I left in March of '69. Went to San Diego, went through all the facts, just like you. I passed all the tests that I was supposed to.
Mhm.
And during the last phase, it was 8 weeks of boot camp. And as a matter of fact, I turned 21 in boot camp. So because I went in March, and my birthday is the 12th of March, and I was already there. So that's what that was all about. I was blessed. So
Okay. Let me break real quick.
mhm.
I am not sure if we're getting sound. Well, we are getting
Yeah, we
sound.
can sound.
Okay, James. I hope you can hear us. If not, you may check your volume. But we are getting sound on this end. Okay. So you went in, and like we showed in the beginning video intro, we showed these recruits getting their hair shaved off. I assume that happened to you.
Oh yeah, I remember
So
that
how much
well.
hair did you have?
I had a ton of hair.
See, I wish I had time before we did this to get some pictures here so we can show
'cause
people.
I've got, as a matter, so
sound.
yeah, I had a ton of hair, and I just watched it all go to the ground. It's like, oh
Wow.
man,
So was that mandatory at that time?
Oh,
All
yeah.
hair comes off.
all hair.
Oh,
all hair.
okay.
Nowadays they leave you a little hair like a buzz.
Yeah.
But back then, I looked just like you.
Praise God.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
it was so funny because when I told some of the guys that today's my birthday, I turned 21, and they told our chief, which is the DI.
Mhm.
He comes up to me and says, "I hear today is your birthday," and I said, "Yes, sir, it is." He goes, "Well, congratulations. Today you're a man. Now get to work." And so, but for us, boot camp was very, very easy because our chief happened to be, he had just got his stripes for being
Yeah.
chief. So we were his first command. And so we got away with so much stuff that normally we wouldn't have. But it was fun. And one of the main reasons why I joined the Navy, not because of my uncle, but because Vietnam was hot, really, really hot at that time. The year before, in '68, they had the Tet Offensive, which was, something really, really
Yeah.
terrible. I didn't want any part of that. And so what happened, I went into the Navy, and after I came out of boot camp, the first place they sent me was Vietnam. Indirectly, indirectly. So what happened is that the way you know if you're going overseas back then was how many shots you would get in your arms when you went through the last week of boot camp.
Wow.
Yeah, and so they had these guys, one on each side, and we had our sleeves rolled up, and they had these guns that were like, super powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they would tell us, don't tighten up because it'll cut you like a razor. Okay.
So,
And so when it was my turn to get up there, I knew I was going overseas because I got 4 shots, 2 in each arm.
Oh, wow.
So I knew, goodbye USA. But to me, it was an adventure. It was exciting because back then I didn't know where I was going to go.
Yeah.
So after my 5-day leave, I came home for a few days and went back, flew to San Francisco. We got on a commercial flight, and from San Francisco we went to Hawaii, from Hawaii to Guam, and then from Guam we ended up in the Philippines. And from the Philippines we had these mail airplanes that would land on the aircraft carriers. My ship at the time was the USS Ticonderoga, CVA-14.
Yeah.
And what they would do is they would send the ship to the Philippines to pick up anything they needed, material that they needed, whatever it is to keep the ship running, and mail. That was an important thing. You cannot leave without mail.
Yeah.
So we had to wait almost 3 weeks before it was finally our turn. And so we got up early in the morning, went to the airport, hopped on board the plane, and we flew off. And as we were flying, we got closer to, we were in the Tonkin Gulf. We were what's called blue water sailors, which means that we weren't in Vietnam, but we were on the outskirts on the coast of Vietnam. And so we were part of what they call the Tonkin Gulf Yacht Club. They even made a pin for us,
Oh, wow.
I had one, but I gave it to a friend of mine who was there also. So,
Yeah.
but it was like, it was pretty awesome. And when we were making our approach, the pilot said, look out your window, and that's where we're going to land. And we looked out, and we saw a ship about that big. And I thought to myself, how are we going to land on that thing?
Wow.
But as we got closer, and the funny thing is when we're in the plane, we're sitting down, but we're facing backwards. Because we're coming in about 102, 103 miles an hour. And when they drop the hook, you go from like 102 or 3 to 0 within 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And so when we caught that cable, we were forced back into the sea. And so we knew we landed. And so when we got there, they took us off the ship, off the boat.
So you actually landed on an aircraft carrier?
Yeah, we landed on an aircraft carrier. Yeah, I landed on it, and it was an experience. I loved it. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed the feeling of like, wow, man, this is so cool. And I can understand why backwards, because if we were facing front, we would have a tremendous forward lunge because, you're going from 0, you're going from 102 to 0. And it's like,
one of those.
Yeah, so that's why they did that, to preserve our backs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what they did is, since we were all raw recruits, we didn't know anything, they took us upstairs to the special room, secondary con, and they told us, wait there, and the people would come for you. So there was about 30 of us there in the room.
Oh, sorry, people.
And one by one, the door would open, and this guy would come in and said, okay, you, and you come with me. And they take off. And then what we didn't know, we found out later, was each one of these individuals were part of a department. So if they needed somebody, they would go up where we were, and they would just choose 1, 2, 3, whatever many people they needed.
Right.
So they all went down the line. Everybody was left. Finally, I was the last one left. And I was wondering, okay, what's going on? So the door opens, the guy comes in, he looks around, he goes, where's everybody else? Well, they took him. You're the last one? I said, yep, I'm the last one. And so he said, all right, come with me. So, even then, before my knowledge of God, like I do now, he's looking out for me. Because what he did, I understood that we were in navigation. Now, on a ship that size, navigation, we are the elite of the ship. Because, like I said earlier, boat doesn't go nowhere without us.
Right.
So we did map the charts, and so we had to learn how to do from A to B. So being in navigation, it was like extremely awesome. It was a big, exciting thing. So I learned little by little. I learned how to read the charts, how to make the charts. We did 4-hour watches, mid-watch, 4 hours at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And because we were navigators, we would get what they call watch standard passes,
Okay.
which would put us, back then on a carrier at that time because we were in Vietnam. The carrier is basically the same as the one that's in the Lexington down in Corpus.
Okay.
Yeah, that's called the Essex class carrier. So that's the carrier we were on. The difference between the Ticonderoga and the Essex was that we were like 300 feet longer. So we were a bit bigger. Okay?
Wow.
So the normal complement for our ship was 3,000 men. We had 4,000 at the time. We had people sleeping everywhere. In the hallway, any open space they could find, that's where people were sleeping. And it was kind of crowded.
So they had bunks, but they did it in shifts then, right?
No, they had their own bunk. They did that. But like I said, everywhere.
So they
A,
slept
s- a- a
everywhere.
s- a space this big here, you would put 6 or 7 guys, and that's how they did it.
And everything's a metal floor. Everything's metal on that ship.
Everything.
So
is metal,
was it
yeah.
pretty tight?
Very tight. Even our own quarters when we were at, they were just a canvas instead of a
mattress.
mat. No,
It's-
we had a mattress, but it was only about maybe so thick. That was it. And there was 3 bunks to a section.
Mhm.
And what they would do is when it was time for us to go to work,
Right.
everybody get off, make up the bed, and then they would lift up the beds. They would
Mm.
fold up.
They folded into the wall almost.
Fold up, not into the wall, but into themselves. They was like
Okay.
a line,
Mhm.
and you would line up, and they pick it up, and that would give us more room to be
Okay.
around, work around, sit down and talk and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Because when those beds were down, there was hardly any space. There was maybe a 2-foot gap between one bed and the other. It was very, very close.
Mm.
And
That's claustrophobic.
yeah, it was. It was. And me being, the way I was, I'm glad that we had like we call them boondockers, but they're combat boots. And we had this one stairway to get up and down the bridge where our job was. That's where we worked on the bridge, with the officers, the captain.
Right.
You asleep?
commander.
Do we have enough life insurance?
And so that's where
How would
we
just
would
one of
work.
us?
And what happened
Sorry.
is one day I was going down the steps and I fell. I slipped off the stairs and I fell straight down.
Ooh.
Both my ankles went under me, and I was like, in tremendous pain. So they took me to the medics, and they had to cut my boots off because my ankles had swelled so bad. Fortunately, they weren't broken; they were just pulled and everything else. So for the first 6 weeks on board the ship, I was on my back.
So your feet were doing the Incredible Hulk thing, busting out
Yeah,
the shoes.
exactly. Breaking out of the shoes, and so that's what we did there, and it was absolutely incredible.
So during your time, did you or did the crew face any hostilities?
No, not really. All we did, our main goal was to cruise off the coast of Vietnam about maybe 25, 30 miles. And we would turn into the wind and launch our aircraft, our fighters,
Oh,
the
okay.
bombers. They would take off and they'd fly sorties into North Vietnam to drop the bomb because they were fighting 2 armies. We were fighting the Viet Cong, and we were also fighting the North Vietnamese army, the regular army.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Viet Cong. Explain that. What's the Viet Cong?
A Viet Cong is like a guerrilla fighter.
Okay.
They were the worst. The regular army, we could face them face to face, toe to toe.
Okay, let me ask this question. The Viet Cong, they're not enlisted in.
No.
But they are for them, so
Exactly.
they're helping them.
The best way to describe Viet Cong is, let's say, for example, America was invaded,
Okay.
and all the people would gather
And me
together.
as a civilian want to
As
go
a
help.
civilians, we would hide and ambush
Okay.
the people. It's like during the Revolutionary War. Okay, the
Got it.
Patriots would hide when the British would come by. They'd fire a volley into them, and then
Yeah.
they'd disappear into the woods. And they would chase them, but they wouldn't find them because they knew
So
the back way.
it's kind of like when in Dunkirk, when all the civilians helped their soldiers get home,
Yes. Yeah.
and with their boats and all this stuff,
Yeah.
they use this. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I understand now.
But
Viet Cong,
the
man,
thing
guerrilla
about
fighters.
the thing about Vietnam is that they had a massive, because they've been fighting since the 50s against the French, so they knew what they were doing. They knew war. What they did is they had massive underground villages where they could get away
Yeah.
with tunnels. If you remember the movie Forrest Gump, when they were in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a
And
hole.
bubble gum.
Yeah, bubble gum. Well, one scene that was they were standing around the entrance to a cave,
Right.
and the guy threw a grenade down there, and then the sergeant gum, and he got his 45. He went down in there, and that's what they would do to find out if there's anybody still alive down there. And they would shoot them, and then come back out,
Man.
report what was there. I mean,
I heard about those tunnels.
yeah, well, those
They're
are
very
something,
elaborate.
and that's one of the reasons why it was so hard for us to kill the Viet Cong, because they were everywhere. These tunnels were everywhere,
Hmm.
and you could be sleeping, bivouacking, and without knowing it, you could be right next to a tunnel. And these guys would open up at night, come out, slit your throat, sneak back in. You wake up the next day, your buddy is dead, and you're going like, oh my God, psychological warfare.
Mm.
It was like absolutely amazing. These guys, the thing about Vietnam,
I
that
would
really,
really go to sleep.
the thing that make it really, really hard, you enter a village in the daytime, and they greet you like
Like they love you.
like they love you, right?
Mm.
But come nightfall, somebody would leave and go to the Kong and say, hey, we got X amount of soldiers here, and they would sneak over and
Man.
they do what they had to do.
Yeah, my brother told me that he
Yeah,
fought
so
in
it was
Vietnam.
it was pretty tough. Yeah,
Mm.
and because being in the Navy, we had off in Vietnam, you had two groups of sailors. You had blue water sailor,
Mm.
like me, because I was in the deep water, and then you had the brown water sailor. The brown water were on the boats, PT boats, basically, that will patrol up and down the rivers for
So
contraband.
that was brown
drinking.
water?
That's called brown water because of the rivers. You know how river
Yeah,
water is
right,
brown.
right.
So they were called brown water sailors.
Okay.
They're the ones, for the longest time, up to about maybe 5-6 years ago, they were getting all the benefits from the VA of Agent Orange and anything else that might have happened to them because they were actually in Vietnam.
Mm.
You know, we had to fight for our right as a blue water
So
sailor.
you're a blue water. Now, what did the blue water sailors actually do?
Well, we're on the ships.
That's it. Just blue
We
and
support
then-
fire. We have
support.
battleships.
Mhm.
We have battleships that would fire their cannons, their rockets. Then we had our aircraft that would launch off the deck. And
So that's what I wanted to ask you. So being on an aircraft carrier, did you have like another destroyer or something, or another ship that would protect you?
oh yeah,
To protect
yeah.
the
If you look at
aircraft
the-
carrier?
If you look at the pictures today, even today, every carrier that goes out has an escort group.
Okay.
Okay, anywhere from 4 to 6 ships. Normally, you have 2 destroyers, 2 battle frigates, 2 rocket powered, not rocket ships that
Mhm.
the missile guided missile
Right.
ships. Okay, so you would have 4 to 6 people, because what would happen is when we would make our trip over to Vietnam, as soon as we left Hawaii, we pick up a Russian trawler, tailing us all the way.
Is it Russian?
Russian, yeah, they knew our
That-
movements.
Okay. So they weren't with you to help you. They were
The Russians?
like spying on you.
They were spying.
You
They were,
pick up a Russian trawler.
yeah, they
so
were
they're-
reporting our
okay.
whereabouts. Every
Because it
every
sounded like
move-
they were with you for a minute, but
no.
no.
Every
So they-
move we made,
they were spying on you.
radio it back. They were spying on it, yeah. And sometimes they would play
Should've blown
chicken.
them out of the water.
Yeah, sometimes we couldn't do that. Sometimes they played chicken with our destroyer escorts because they'd come in and our escort would go that way, chase them off, and then they'd go back.
Mhm.
And one time we scared the heck out of this one because he came in, our guy went after him, he turned and went away thinking everything was fine, but our guy kept going after him. Our guy chased him.
Really?
It was something to
Giving
see.
them their
Yeah, give them the idea.
weapons.
You want to mess with us? We're going to mess back with you. And so that's
How do you think
basically
they
what it was.
got funded? How do you think they got all the weapons from Russia and China?
Well, yeah,
Well-
because the trawlers, all they would do is they would, like I said, they would spy on us,
Yeah.
report our positions, where we were, when we would arrive on line, and the whole 9 yards. So that's the way it was. So we would spend 3 to 4 weeks online, and then we'd go to R&R. We'd go to Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, the Philippines,
Yeah.
to take our 2-week
Mhm.
blowing off steam, people getting drunk,
So
getting back on the ship, going back on the line.
So before we go on, I want to take a moment to take a little break. And once again, this is on Memorial Day. Gilbert is sharing his side of the Navy, his experience being in the Navy for 6 years. I don't want that in there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to watch this video real quick. And let me make I need to state, for the sake of my channel on YouTube, that I am not making any profit from these videos, from music videos, from anything I'm showing on here. This is Memorial Day, and just to remember once again the men and women who gave their lives. And you know, you said in the beginning, let me turn the camera back on. You said in the beginning that back then it was just men. I'm not sure when women started getting enlisted, but I know for a fact women that have lost their lives in battle also.
Yes.
And so, having said that, we're just going to take a break, let y'all enjoy this, and just have an appreciation for what they did for us. So here we go.
Their lives ended in places called Bella Wood, Omaha Beach, Salerno, Guadalcanal, the Chosin Reservoir, the jungles of Vietnam, and the deserts and mountains of Iraq and Afghanistan. What they gave us is beyond our power to repay. So, all we can do is remember them. We see them in our minds as old and wise, when most of them were so young. And when they died, they gave up 2 lives. The one they were living and the one they would have lived. No weapon in the world is more formidable than the will and courage of free men and women. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. There are those who say that we are in a time when there are no heroes. They just don't know where to look.
Howdy, pilgrims. Pappy Stew here. Hope this finds you well. It's Memorial Day, the day we set aside to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice. My grandfather and great uncles lost their friends in World War II, in the European and the Pacific theaters. I lost mine in Nam, Mekong Delta. And our sons and daughters have lost their friends in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I'm sure their sons and daughters will lose theirs in some other foreign shore. If I was an optimist, I'd say that maybe they won't. maybe they'll get lucky. But history has proved that is probably naive, to say the least. But on this day, we'll do our best to pay them the honor and the memory that their sacrifice deserves. Pappy Stu said it, and I'm out and on the side.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Okay.
That was awesome to say the least.
Man. You know, real quick. When they played taps in that video yesterday in service, I knew I was going to mess up. I knew I was going to be a mess. I mean, that is one piece of beautiful music, but so powerful. Especially when you have been to funerals, as they played it when my dad passed, and I'm sure your sides of the family also. But whenever you hear that, and I hear it almost daily at Fort Sam, excuse me. But when they played that part of that video yesterday morning, and I noticed that Joe Ruby stood up, you stood up, Gilbert, and immediately my wife and I stood up. And then all of a sudden people started standing. And whether they're saluting or putting their hand over their heart, you know, I've heard people say that, you know, well, you're a civilian, so what does it mean to you? Taps, you know, I understand veterans standing up, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm an American. You know, I understand what taps, the reason they play that is they play it every night in Fort Sam at 10 o'clock, lights out, but it's a comfort of letting soldiers know we got your back. We're watching over you. You can sleep safely and peaceably tonight. But even as Americans, I can sleep peaceably at night, knowing that my nation's protected by our best.
We are so blessed.
So that was powerful when we started standing, man. And once again, you know, eyes were teared. I think the Kleenex boxes were emptied out. But how did you feel during that time?
I felt respect and honor that I was one of the few to come back.
Yeah, you may need to speak up just.
I lost a couple of friends in Vietnam from high school. After I came back, I did some calling around to people, letting them know I was back in circulation in the States, and they told me, hey, did you hear about so-and-so? I said, no. And it's so funny because the two guys that I knew that died in Nam, one was, to me, an antagonist in high school, and the other was a friend. But yet, when I heard that both of them died, I felt the same about both of them. That even though he was an antagonist, he was a friendly antagonist. Because my skin was dark back at that time.
Yeah.
He would always call me Blackie. He'd say, hey, Blackie, how you doing? I said, Flynn, that's not my name. Yeah, it is to me, because you're dark. I know you're Mexican, but I'm going to call you Blackie. So I said, okay, whatever turns you on, man.
Yeah.
But it's so, people lost their lives. They paid the ultimate. But if you, without getting political, if you really know what it's all about, you really need to study the Vietnam War to find out. And I know people who have looked at it will agree with me. Such a wasteful war.
Yeah.
You know, it was all about money and politics. That's all it was. Yeah.
And for someone that really wasn't in the military, but even still, I knew that to be true.
Yeah.
And I remember during that time where a lot of it, I think I was in junior high, where my dad started educating my brother and I on military wars and strategies during that time, because he wanted his sons to really understand and know what's going on, what was worth it, and what wasn't worth it.
Right.
Exactly. And I understood the Vietnam War was one of those that was a waste of human life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I remember that when men and women came back, Jane Fonda rose up out of the mire and started rallying Americans. And back then, I think it was a lot of hippies at the time, but a lot of Americans that against not the war in a sense, but disrespect for the men and women, even though we shouldn't have been there, maybe, I don't know. But when they came back, just spitting on them and
That wasn't right.
calling them names and
Yeah.
total disrespect.
Well, let's get one thing straight first about Jane Fonda. Okay. She went to Vietnam, North Vietnam.
Yeah.
She was with all the Viet Cong and all those people over
right.
there, and she was on their side. And being who she was,
So the enemy, in other
she was
words.
on the enemy side. So when she came back, she was saying how wrong we were to be there.
Mm.
That it's wrong, and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
And what you say is right about protesters, because the way we saw it, we answered the call.
Mm-hmm.
Our nation called us, and we went, and we did our job. We did what we were supposed to do.
Duty is duty.
Duty is duty, right or wrong. Sometimes you have to say no if
Yeah.
you know it's wrong. You might get court-martialed, but at least you did something and stood up for it, because America is America.
Yeah.
Its honesty, its integrity is at stake with each one of our military people where they're at around the world. And the way things are today, you know, in my mind, because of what I went through at a young age, how much more I appreciated America when I came back.
Yeah.
Because of the freedoms that we take for granted. So to me, I would say every young man at 18 years old should spend 2 years overseas in the military to see how the third world is reacting, how they are, how subdued, subjected they are. And the thing about it is, you never know what you have until you lose it. And right now, we're slowly losing our freedom.
I believe in certain countries, they have to go in the military. They have to spend
Yeah,
some time.
yeah. And in some cases, let's say, for example, the Israelis, the Israeli army, okay, they have
They
to
do.
join.
They have to.
But they do it willingly because they know they're fighting for their country.
Right.
If you try to put a draft in today, you would have so many protests, congressmen, senators. No, that's wrong. You can't do that anymore. That's against the law.
You want this
We
freedom.
shouldn't do that. Yeah, you want the freedom, but you don't want to pay the price.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Because when I came out in 1975, that's when we pulled out of Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And the weirdest thing about it is that 1975, I remember clearly, a new company had come into town, Skaggs Albertsons.
I remember that.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
and their first store was over on Blanco and West Avenue. Of course, today it's that big pizza place, right?
Yeah.
Back then, it was Skaggs Albertsons.
Yeah.
So I was living on the south side, over by Harlandale, and I drove every day to work, or whether when I opened up everything else. And one of our janitors was a Vietnamese. And I asked him, I said, are you a Vietnamese? And he said, yes. Turns out, he told me his story. He was a major in the South Vietnamese army.
Wow.
And when they were leaving, when we were leaving, you seen the pictures on the American Embassy, the helicopters, the people climbing over the fences, the Marines holding them back.
Right.
He had to make a choice between bringing his men out or his family. And he chose his men. As a good commander, he chose his men. So he and his men came out of Vietnam. Of course, later on down the line, years later, he brought his family over. But the choice that they had to make at that time, you know, because
Yeah.
when you look at everything that's going on, we backed the wrong side. The North was communist, yes, but they were more open to Western ways than the South was. The South was more of a tyrant. But
Okay.
because they were, quote unquote, democratic, we took their side. And being as powerful as we were back in those days with the Army, Air Force, Marines, we could have taken that country like that without a problem.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that. It's all political. It's all money. People made money. People made money off of every single war we've ever had. Civil War. I mean, Korea. World War I, World War II, Vietnam. And I have no doubt they're making money off the wars we had in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You know, my son-in-law, he did 6 tours. He did 4 in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan.
So, for to interrupt real quick for our listeners' sake, how long is usually a tour?
A tour can be normally 18 months.
Okay.
Okay, that's normally what a tour is. Back in Vietnam, 18 months.
So he did 6 tours.
He did 6 tours.
Wow.
And when he came out, I mean, he was in 6 different explosions while he was there, and he survived every one. Because we prayed for him, we lifted him up in church. I witnessed to him. He accepted Christ, and the stories I could tell you, what he told me, what was going on over there, was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. It was something else. But the opportunity to be in another country, a third world country, and see how they live. You know, I had the opportunity when I was there to break bread with people in Vietnam and Singapore. And it was an awesome experience. It was almost like being a missionary without attached to a church. You know?
Yeah.
And
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
because I got to see everything that they see. You know, the first thing they tell us when you go overseas, when you go in the city, whether Hong Kong, Singapore, the Philippines, Japan, stay in the city. What did I do? I went in the suburbs. You know, I would walk by myself. Never go by yourself anywhere. Always have a buddy system.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't pay attention to that. And because of that, I saw more of the third world. My education really, really advanced by being with the people. It's so funny because I'll share a really quick story with you. When I was making that walk, I was getting hungry. So I saw a restaurant. I went inside. As soon as I opened the door and went in, everything stopped. Conversation came to a dead stop. And I didn't pay attention. I said, okay. So I found an empty table. I sat down. And everybody was looking at me. The waiter comes up, starts talking in Japanese. I said, I pointed to a table that had some food on it.
Yeah.
I said, that, me, that. He goes, okay. A few minutes later, he comes back with a plate. So I started eating it. Oh, man, it was fantastic. But on the plate, there was a little bitty square, like a little squeezy thing, green. I kind of hit it with my finger. I wonder what that is. So I got it, and I popped it in my mouth. Oh, my God. That was the most ugliest tasting thing in the world. And I went, oh, man. And everybody broke out laughing. Everybody was laughing at me. And all I could hear was, crazy American, crazy American. And that broke the ice. Because after that, they all came up to me. They were talking to me, trying to talk to me, tap me on the shoulder, making fun of me. You know, who knows what they call me. But they wouldn't let me pay for my meal. They would not let me pay for my meal.
Okay, Gilbert.
So that was.
I hear what you say, but you're not revealing what that was.
What was it?
Nor will I.
Oh, man.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, but
So
it was
what's the
most...
worst thing you've seen when you were over there? I mean, the worst. Absolute worst.
When I
Like,
was,
well, while you were there, like, what's the worst thing? Like,
well,
you
like
know.
I said,
the worst.
when they told us you can't go anywhere to stay in the city,
Mm-hmm.
it was 71 in Hong Kong.
Okay.
And they would tell us, stay on the main streets. Don't go anywhere else, stay on the main streets. But all of a sudden I heard this flute music. Beautiful, beautiful flute music. So I was trying to trace it down. And I was walking, and then it was down an alley.
Yeah.
So I went down that alley, and I kept going, and I found the music. And so I saw that. It was an old Chinese guy with a hat on and rags. He was playing a wooden flute through his nose. Okay,
Oh.
the most beautiful music. So when he finished, he had a little hat there for me. So I put $1 in there, and the people were like watching me around there, and I felt sorry for these people because they were trying to make a living, but there was so much squalor.
Yeah.
In and around the area. I mean, there was you could smell the feces, you could smell the urine, and yet they were operating the business like there was nothing, you know. But the guy kept playing it, and I kept putting money, and then all of a sudden, somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and it was a Chinese guy, and he had a chair for me. So I sat down, and every time, I guess they were telling him that who I was, that he was playing, and so I kept putting money in. The next thing I know, they brought me something to eat. I tried to pay for it. No, 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 no. So I was eating whatever it was they were eating. It was good. They gave me chopsticks. So after that, I don't even know what I was eating. I remember one time
It was just well seasoned.
Yeah, well seasoned. One time in the Philippines, I was. They had me a stick of meat, so I took a bite. It was good, so I ate the whole thing. And then later on, they told me it was monkey meat. I go, well, it was a good monkey. Whatever they did with it.
I'd probably try some monkey.
But getting back to the old man, after about maybe an hour, all of a sudden they said something to the old man, and he stopped really quick, jumped. They helped him. He gripped all his money together, and they called me, go, leave, quick, go. And I go, what? What's going on? They point down at it to the end of the alley. Bad people come. You go.
Oh.
So I took off. So I don't know what they meant, but I didn't want to find
I
out.
would have been gone already. You wouldn't have tell me twice.
And that's it. I just took off.
So when you leave without a wingman, without a buddy, and that's your CO finds out about that, I'm sure it doesn't go too well.
No, it doesn't. Time after time, I would get threatened with court-martial. But back not, it wasn't a court-martial back then. It was called captain's mast. Okay, where if you did something wrong, first you go to the XO, commander-in-chief, and plead your case. And if it was bad enough, then they take it to the captain's mast. And so they told me, this is the 5th time this has happened. You're going to captain's mast. I said, okay. So I went to captain's mast. But what they didn't know, the fact that while I was on the bridge, I was working closely with the captain. I would give him my reports. I was, ship shape, with my uniform, even though it was dungarees. I had it ironed because I knew I was going to make a report, so I'd go ahead and give him the daily report. And so I knew him, and he would say, Chavez, how you doing today? I'm fine, Captain, fine. And so when I stood before him, he goes, is this right? And I said, yes, sir. You willfully went by yourself into the neighborhoods. I said, yes, sir, I did. Did you regret it? I said, no, sir. I said, what did you get out of it? I said, a better appreciation of how these people live. All right, get out of here. So that was it. And the XO was livid because he wanted me in the brig. Yeah, so he looked at the XO. You bring me this? And that's all he said.
Wow.
But it was fun. I mean, to be honest with you, that was some of the most wonderful, wonderful times of my life as a young man, what I did. Because I was a loner. Growing up, I was a middle child. I was always an introvert, never outspoken. I would be made fun of all the time. I was bullied all the time. And they even told me one time, making fun of me, they said, Chavez, you're so green that the trees look white when you stand next to them. I go, oh, okay, whatever that means. So when I joined the Navy, my education really, really took off. Yeah, I mean, I learned about the world. I learned about all kinds of things that are happening, the way the world functions for it. Singapore was one of the most pleasant surprises in my life. The cleanest city, back again in 71, one of the cleanest cities I've ever seen, even cleaner than the States.
Wow.
I mean, it is just absolutely incredible, so beautiful. Look up pictures today of Singapore, and you will see what it's like. Now, Hong Kong, when I was there, again, in the 70s, the girls that came with Pastor Alonso, when he came from Japan, no, Alfonso, when he came from Japan, I told her that I was in Hong Kong. She showed me pictures of Hong Kong today. Didn't even recognize it. I said, that's not what I saw. So the next day I went home, took out my pictures, took out a picture I showed her, said, this is the Hong Kong I know. She goes, ooh, that long time ago. I said, yeah, well, that just to go show you how long it's been since I've been there. So, yeah. Wow. But getting back to your question, Tony, I was blessed that I never was witness to anything like that.
So
I've talked with people. Matter of fact, our company, our division, we got a new guy in charge, and he was on a brown water sailor, and he was our second in command. he showed us. He had 3 marks where he was shot with a 50 caliber from the Viet Cong.
Man.
He
50
survived.
caliber.
He survived. How? But he did. And he would tell us story after story. I mean, things. that were just, I thank God I never went over there because it was like, oh man.
Yeah, I was just wondering because my brother, he got bayonet wound and mortar shell the same day coming back off of patrol.
Yeah.
And you know, he showed me the bayonet wound. You can see where they stuck in and twisted the bayonet. And he talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, when he came home.
And that's really strange because most of the veterans that you talk to in a war situation, they're very reluctant to talk about it. As a matter of fact, to give you a point, Saturday night we had that memorial backstage,
Right.
and I went up there. After we did the skit, Michael had me go up and do what I'm doing here with you guys, and so I did. And after it was all done, as I was leaving, one of the ladies who sits up in front of our section,
Right.
she said, "Excuse me, can I talk to you for a minute?" I said, "Yeah, sure." I know she's there. I don't know her name, but I know she was part of our church. And she says, "I just want to thank you for what you said." And I go, "Well, you're welcome." She goes, "Because my dad was a Vietnam veteran. Now I understand how he was and why he was the way he was. What you said made sense to me as to how my dad was and what he went through. Because as a little girl, he would be sitting in the garage drinking his beer, and he would be talking to himself."
Sounds like James,
Yeah, and that's
my brother.
Yeah. And so I'm glad I could help you. So thank you. I said, okay. So, but if we had time, I could tell you story after story of things that I went through over there, things that I've seen.
Well, what's one of the juiciest stories you can tell us right now? And I mean
Juicy.
I mean,
Describe
just
juicy.
some salt and pepper on it,
There was really nothing really that I could say that I was exposed to. God was with me the whole time.
Praise God.
And I thank him over and over again that he did not let me experience or see any of that. What he showed me was how people live. Regular, normal people from overseas.
Okay.
Guam,
I like that.
Hong Kong, Singapore, the Philippines especially. One day I was walking out of the base going downtown in Olongapo City. Now you mention Olongapo City to any sailor from the Pacific and they know exactly what you're talking about, because that was the most seedy place in the world at that time. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. I had a little bit Olongapo City.
Olongapo.
Yeah. We had the gates of the base in Subic Bay, okay? And between the Olongapo City and the base was a bridge.
Right.
And there was a dirty water, a river. And we had a specific name for it that I cannot say, but that's what they called it. And what the guys would do is they'd throw money over the side, because there was little kids in the water.
Oh my goodness.
And they would dive under the water for the money that they would throw over. Okay. And so I was walking, and back in those days, we always had to have our uniforms on. So I was walking down the street one day, and this little girl, can't be more than 8 or 9 years old, came up to me, hand out, "Money, money, Joe, give me money." And I said,
That's why they call y'all Joe.
yeah, they always called us Joe. And I said, "No, I'm not going to give you any money," because she had her hand behind her back. And I said, "No, I'm not going to give you any money." And then she brings her hand, I'm sorry. She brings her hand out from behind her back, and she's got a razor blade
See?
in her hand.
That's what I'm talking about.
And she goes, "I cut you, I cut you." I said, "No, you're not."
That's what I'm talking about.
And I yelled at her.
So that was an experience right there.
Yeah, and I yelled at her, and there was a cop there, Philippine cop, and he heard me yelling. He looked, he saw the little girl. He comes up to me, "What happened? What happened?" And I told him, I should have said nothing. But I'm being naive, dumb. I said, I told him what she did. Man, he got that little girl and beat the heck out of her.
Oh my God. About how old was she?
Like I said, 8 or 9 years
8 or
old.
9 years old.
Yeah, and here's the thing about the cops there. They didn't wear pistols. They had bandoliers across the chest, shotgun shells, and they all carried sawed-off shotguns. So you wouldn't mess with these guys because anything happens, boom, matter
So
what.
he beat her for doing that.
He beat her for threatening me, an American soldier,
mm,
a Navy man. That's what he did. She threatened me, so he beat her up for that.
I cut you. Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
Now there was
You're
a
that
lot of
desperate.
there was a lot of other things I can tell you about what was going on there, but no, I'm a Christian. I can't talk.
Well,
about
yeah.
that.
I mean, some of the things that you were thrust into,
Yeah.
you know, as a military man, you know,
Yeah.
a Navy person. I mean, you didn't expect all that when
No,
you got into
no.
the Navy.
It was like I said, my education really got heavily involved when I was overseas, because we did a lot on board the ship here in the States, maintenance, cleaning everything up.
Were some of the Vietnamese people that you were fighting for against the Americans?
Yeah, they were,
Mhm.
because they, like I said, since the 50s they've been fighting the French, and then we came in because the French couldn't do anything. So in the early 60s we came in and took over, and so they hated us because we were invaders on their property, on their land. We were the invaders. We were the bad guys. No matter how you looked at it, we were the bad guys. We were the good guys in our eyes because we were
Yeah.
trying to liberate the South from the North.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's how they saw it, and that's why they were, you know, we value in America life above everything else, especially the life of a child. Overseas, they don't.
Yeah.
At that time in Vietnam, they would booby trap kids
Oh my goodness.
to
I heard about
kill
that.
American
Yeah,
soldiers,
I heard
because you
about
know,
that.
you look at the movies and the things about World War II, when the soldiers would go into the cities and kids would come up and they'd give them chocolate bars.
Yeah.
Okay, we were expecting the same thing in Vietnam, and that's what they preyed upon. They'd get kids, load them up with dynamite, send them out. Soldiers would get around them, and by a phone, they'd send a phone, and they would blow up, kill the kid as well as the soldiers. So it was really, really sad, and that's why so many Americans came back so messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
I've seen some.
We did not have a specific enemy besides the regulars, the North Army regulars.
Yeah.
But most of the time we were fighting the Viet Cong and even some of the kids. I mean, even in the city, Saigon.
Did you have any friends that you knew that went with you that died or got injured off your aircraft carrier? Did any of them get injured?
No, because we never got in a battle zone. We were in a battle zone in the Gulf, but not on the ground, boots on the ground. We never did that.
Yeah, well, your Navy.
Yeah, so we never did that. But now the brown water, they were on the ground all the time. We had a naval base there. We had people there.
Yeah.
If we needed a chart from the area, we'd get on a helicopter, fly into Saigon, go to the Navy department that they had there, the Navy base, grab the charts we needed, and fly back. And that was the only time anybody would get on there. But see, the thing that we were trying to fight as blue water sailors, we were close off the Gulf. And Agent Orange, when the winds would blow, we would have to go into the wind. And so whatever was in the wind, we would inhale it. It would come to it because we were there for 6 months at a time. And you know how windy it gets at the coast. The wind coming off, and all
Yeah.
that stuff would come to us. But finally, about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, they passed a law acknowledging that now blue water sailors can apply for testing of them.
Yeah.
So, but again, they're still not doing anything because I did that 2 years ago. Went through the whole rigmarole.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything. Nothing. So. but-
Okay. For those that are watching this, maybe you have a question, comments. We would love to hear them. Maybe you have something for Gilbert, or maybe you just have thoughts, your own personal thoughts about Memorial Day and how you look at it. And you know, you can go anywhere. I went, like I said earlier, I went to Bernie today, and they were having around the main strip, I guess considered their downtown, memorial service, monuments there, flags there, a lot of veterans there. You have the motorcycle veterans that came in, and I'm sure Fort Sam has the same. I've witnessed that. But feel free to comment. And also, for those that just joining, you haven't joined before, we welcome you. Please subscribe, and that really blesses and helps the channel out, and let me know who you are. I sure would appreciate that. But
Yes.
once again, we as Americans, we cannot and should not forget the sacrifices made. It's so easy for someone that never served to just become complacent, just become unappreciative. They can say, why are we fighting this fight? Why are our men and women going there? Why are they going here? Why? And they can protest, they can march on the Capitol, they can go to the White House and do what they do without ever understanding the importance of why America's free.
Right.
I mean, and to transition that, because we're going on an hour and a half here, and we do appreciate your time, Gilbert, believe me,
Yes, we do.
and what you had to say. But to transition Memorial Day to a spiritual plateau is, there's someone else that shed his blood, someone else that gave it all.
Amen.
In fact, he gave way more, if I may say that, not to discredit our men and women in uniform, but Jesus Christ gave so much more for humanity. The same that our soldiers did for America, Jesus did for the world. And, when the experience that I went through in June 28, 1986, when I bowed my knee and asked Jesus in my heart, there was something liberating at that moment, something that changed me forever, going on 35 years. And the same gratitude I have for our military, even so I have for what Jesus did for me. And Gilbert, when you came out of the Navy, to the point where you gave your life to Christ, can you describe briefly that moment when you bowed your knee, bowed your heart, and realized there was someone else that shed his blood and gave it all for you?
Yes, absolutely. When I came out, even as a young man in my family, people had to walk around me with like on eggshells, because I had a tremendous amount of anger and rage in my heart. I have no idea where it came from, but I had it. I even came across a picture of myself, I don't know who took it, of me sitting in an easy chair, pointing at somebody with the most horrendous look on my face of anger. And after Nam, when I came out, there was also hatred.
Yeah.
Unbearable hatred. I mean, first year there, I was always in fights, because
Right.
they'd insult me by calling me names,
Yeah.
and so I had all this anger and rage and hatred. And then when I came out in '73, I took care of my mom, and she had colon cancer, and she was in remission. And the day we were supposed to bring her home, she had a brain aneurysm and she died. And so that even increased my anger, but this time it was towards God, because I said, God, why did you take her from me?
Right.
Because I wanted to be with her, because everybody else was gone, so it was just me, my mom, and my dad.
Mhm.
And so that just added to the rage and anger that I had inside of me.
Mhm.
And then, getting on the GI Bill, I went back to SAC in 1981. And one summer day, July the 3rd, 1981, I was depressed, I was angry, I had been married, I had a child, and I was leaving school, I was leaving classes, and I had my head down, and I was walking to the parking lot, and next thing you know, I find myself in front of this door. So I thought, where am I? So I opened the door and walked in, and it
Yeah.
was one of it was a Baptist Student Center. There was nobody in there. So I walked in, I looked around, I go, wow, is anybody here? And then I saw a girl come out from one of the rooms, and she said, can I help you? And I said, well, I don't know. I was going to my car, and all of a sudden, I found myself here. So I came in.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, do you know Jesus? I said, well, yeah, who doesn't know Jesus? No. Do you know Jesus?
Yeah.
I said, I don't understand what you're saying. So she explained it to me. And
I'm
then
sorry. And where was this?
At the SAC.
Oh, so this is
at the
San Antonio?
Yeah, San Antonio.
Okay.
Student Baptist Center.
Okay.
And so she explained to me about Jesus, how he died on the cross, the whole 9 yards, everything else. And then she said, would you like to have him in your heart? And I said, I guess, sure. And so we prayed the prayer, sinner's prayer. And, oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
All the rage, the anger,
Yeah.
the hatred was
Wow.
gone like vapor in the wind.
Come
It
on.
just disappeared. And I was set free.
Yes.
Right.
And it was such a magnificent, wonderful feeling to be free at last from this anger, because I was beside myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, when they say the words,
Mm.
when God sets you free, you are free indeed.
Yes.
I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed all these years. Because I can honestly say I was a good Catholic when I grew up. I was born and raised a Catholic, okay? And ever since I was a small child, I knew God was in my presence. I mean, all through my life, I knew he was there.
Yeah.
So intense that sometimes I'd look behind me because I would feel like somebody was behind me. And I'd look and there's nobody there. And I'm going nuts. What's happening?
Mm-hmm.
But I could always feel a presence.
Yeah.
And in 81, when I accepted Christ, I became what's known to us as a feel-good Christian.
Yeah.
Okay. I said, Lord, I'll follow you, but I'll do it my way, on my terms. And he said, okay, that's fine. We'll do it that way. Not until I came to the door, Christian Fellowship Church, that I really, really understand who Jesus Christ really was.
Yeah.
And that, again, turned my life around completely. Because I was able to meet men like you and Tony and others,
Yeah.
friends that I could call friends. And because I was following Jesus, man, I was set free.
Glory.
And I am the man I am today because Christ set me free.
And that's going on how many years now since you got saved?
Well, what is it, 81, almost 50 some odd years? What is it, 81 to 2021? Yeah, about 50. Someone that
I got it.
Glory to God.
I'm not good at
We'll
math.
try, yeah.
Let's see. 81, 91, 2001, 13, 21, 50 years. So,
Wow.
I'm 73, so what do you want?
Hey,
Yeah.
that's good,
So,
man. That's powerful.
I mean, there's just no other feeling in the world like being set free.
And it's like I say, you know, and
Mhm.
even Jesus said it, taste of me and see that I am good.
Oh, yes.
There's a
Absolutely.
satisfaction, a fulfillment. There's something that can't be substituted for. When you, once you give Christ your life, I mean,
Exactly.
it lasts. And if it doesn't last, it's not Jesus's fault. It's our excuses we make,
Yeah.
you know, to whatever that excuse is.
And here's one of the things, too, is this past Sunday, just as church was beginning, Michael Luna Jr. came up to me and asked me if I wanted to say a few words for the Children's Church on Memorial Day. So I went back there and Jack was talking and we started together, and then Jack said, you know, if you want to say something, you can say something. But this is what we're looking at. And that's that verse, you know, no greater love is known than this, than
Yeah.
a friend should lay down his life
For a brother.
a brother. And so I was talking to the kids, and I said, one of the things you need to understand, Memorial Day, memorial is a short word for saying memory.
Yeah.
So you have to remember the men and women who died, who made it possible for you to sit here and worship God and Jesus
Oh, yeah.
without the fear of police breaking in and arresting your parents or arresting you, because men and women have lost their lives and paid for the fact that you can be here.
Yeah. That's true.
And so I thought, man, I was thinking maybe I was talking over their head, but then later on after church, Pastor Gamboa and I were walking together, and he said, "You know what? A little girl told me about what you said over there."
Right.
And she goes, "Really?" And he says, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I thought I might have been talking over the heads." And no. She said, "You were talking about people that died that we need to remember and freedom." I said, "Well, at least they listen."
Yeah.
But it's true. Because Memorial Day, before I went in the military, it was just a holiday. Barbecue,
Right.
family together.
Go to the lake.
Like today, a lot of people don't really understand what this is all about.
Right.
Even though you got all kinds of videos, all kinds of flags flying at half-staff, they ask why. They don't even ask why anymore. It's like they don't care
People
anymore.
need to ask. They need to be taught.
Yeah. And that's going to be one of the hardest things in the world, because the way things are today, because of the political situation we're in, you try to talk to somebody and they'll shut you down. Who do you think you are? You can't talk to me like that. That's a lie. And you're like, hey, it's not a lie. I lived through it. I lost friends through it, you know. So you might not know anybody, but that one picture I saw had an American flag. And the words were kind of to the effect of, those who disrespect the American flag have never been handed a folded one.
Oof.
Wow.
And when I read that, it almost made me cry. Because it is so true.
Yeah.
It is so true. You don't respect the flag until it's handed to you, folded, because your brother, your sister, your father, your cousin, your uncle paid the final price for you to be able to go on that protest and speak your mind. I know thousands of these men are turning over in their graves right
Oh
now.
my
Most
gosh.
young Americans, they don't understand the freedoms that we have in America. Why we have the freedoms that we have. Well, first of all, Jesus Christ, who died for us to be saved. And then, you know, we got the men and women that fought in these wars. I mean, we'd be eating sauerkraut right now if it wasn't for some of them, you know.
Well, that might be true.
What's wrong with sauerkraut?
Yeah, I love sauerkraut, man. I'll tell you what, I think I got some German blood. The hot dog is
But we
not a
be
hot
eating it
dog
the
without
wrong
sauerkraut.
way. With schnitzel.
Yeah.
And shout out to Phoenix, my grandson. How you doing there? You know what it's about, right, man?
Yeah. Hey, Phoenix, how you doing? You doing all right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's watching too. I see it right there.
I see that.
Yeah,
James
so
and Phoenix.
James, tell him what Memorial Day is all about, man.
Yeah, don't let him forget.
Yeah, as he grow up. We
Educate.
appreciate having Gilbert today, listening to what he has to say about his time in the military. And if you have any questions, we'd like for you to just text us, ask those questions. We're still here for a couple more minutes. Let us know what you want to ask.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to answer anything that you ask if I know the answer.
Yeah.
But there are some things I can't say.
Right.
Like the saying goes, I can tell you, then I got to kill you.
Don't be shy.
Yeah.
We're here, and ask us a question. Come on.
See here.
It was awesome.
I actually went there.
I did too. Sure did. I went there.
I don't think let's do this. While people are thinking. We'll shut us off for a minute. Bring this up so they can see it. So, the Soldiers of the Wall. If you ever been to the Wall Memorial and seen all the names, little ways across is the monuments of these guys, whoever they may be. But it's called the Soldiers of the Wall.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a story behind it. If I need to put this link on my page so y'all can read it when you feel like you can. But it's pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, folks, is we need to have an appreciation, man. Our culture nowadays, aside from wanting to take, sorry, Gilbert.
That's all right.
Aside from wanting to take Jesus out of schools and prayer out of schools and anything about Christ out of society, the next thing is taking the memorials that our nation fought for and exchanging monuments for the insanity of, like we saw in that video the other day, some type of satanic statue. I don't know what it was. Man, I mean, they're taking down historical monuments,
tearing down
replacing
statues,
it. You know,
that's not going to help anything.
it's frustrating, and
It
as a coming from an American citizen, it's just disgraceful. And for the people that desire to want to do this, man, I mean, we know we're living in the Book of Revelations right now.
We're in the birth pain era right now, and it's happening faster than you can think. This is the time we need to be living for Jesus Christ, people.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is no joke. It's serious. Now, as far as war goes, as we said in the past, this is the most important battle ever. And that's the battle for the souls of men and women and children and those that don't know Jesus Christ, that need to know Jesus Christ, that need to know what Jesus Christ done for all of us when he got up on that cross and died for us. That is most important.
And if you do not know Christ, maybe you're viewing, maybe you're gonna view this, you know, we have to end on the most positive note possible, and that is that Jesus Christ died on the cross willingly, just like men and women in uniform go into the military, go into the battlefront willingly. They know what they're going in, stepping into for the sake and for the safety and for the freedoms of our nation and for you and I. Jesus Christ died to give you the freedom from sin, to let go of sin and grab a hold of eternal life and the joy, the peace of mind, just like Gilbert shared earlier, what he felt that moment that he asked Jesus Christ in. I know that feeling because I did the same thing, cried my eyes out at the altar when I experienced Christ coming in my life. You need to give Jesus a chance. Stop making excuses. Stop thinking, well, one day, this is the popular excuses, one day I will, and don't even realize you're not guaranteed tomorrow.
Exactly.
And maybe you didn't fight in any other wars, but there's one that you need to enlist in, and that's the army of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, the battle, there is a battle right now you don't even realize that is fighting for your soul, and it's heaven fighting for your soul against the enemy. Hell is fighting for you too. So you need to make a decision for Christ, not for the devil, not for the angels. You say, well, I'm not living for the devil. Who are you to tell me I'm living for the devil? The Bible. If you're not for Christ, the Bible says you're against Christ. And that's why we're here, not just to memorialize and honor our nation and the men and women of our nation that died for our nation, but we're here to let you know in transition that someone even greater died for your sins, that you would know him and he would give you eternal life. Heaven's real, hell is real.
Amen.
And I've experienced as much hell as I want to living 22 years of my life, or 21 years of my life. Gave my life at 22 and been living for Christ for 35 years. So I've been living for Christ longer than I've been living for the devil.
Hello.
And I'm telling you, it's much more rewarding being on this side. Would you agree?
Amen.
It's wonderful.
So we're gonna end this podcast. It was great. Once again, guest speaker, Gilbert Chavez.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Sharing
Thank you for
actually
having
sharing some very good stuff, Gilbert, and I appreciate you doing that. There are things you said that, of course, I didn't know. I hear stories that my sister experienced in the Navy, my brother experienced in the Navy, and depending on where you all went, I learned a lot, and I appreciate your sacrifice, because even though you said I wasn't boots on ground, but what you did experience, and even if there was a hardship or disappointments or frustrations or whatever, you were there, you placed yourself in that position to give me, Clifford Williams, the liberties and the freedoms and the joys of being an American citizen and enjoying what America has to offer. And so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
yeah, and
Very
so
nice.
we're going to close finally on this video for y'all, as I can't wait till I get my new computer.
And tell someone to come join us
Oh, y'all better
this
tell somebody.
Thursday. You're 7 Thursday, right?
Thursday.
So Thursday
We'll be back on at 5 o'clock this time. And yeah.
And we have some good stuff for you
Yep.
that we're going to talk about. We'll give you a little hint. It's going to be good.
It'll be good. So God bless y'all. And we'll end on this note. And y'all have a great evening.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. There's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land.